Requesting Shri Ajay Tewari ji and the other dignitaries on the dais to kindly light the lamp, please, as we begin the keynote session. जोरदार तालियां। Thank you so much. So we had Saraswati Vandana playing in the background, and Saraswati being the goddess of knowledge. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the most apt, I think, to invoke the spirit of the Almighty and seek His blessings so that whatever we have begun, we are successful in that. After lighting the inaugural lamp, may I please request Director General, Bureau of Energy Efficiency, Shri Abhay Bakre ji, to kindly present the welcome note, please. Let's welcome Shri Abhay Bakre.
Thank you. A very good morning to all. Shri Ajay Tewari, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Power, and today's chief guest. Dr. Oliver, Charge d'Affaires, Embassy of Switzerland, Professor Dr. Richard, my colleague Saurav Didi, distinguished guests from different ministries, international organizations, embassies, architects, professionals, builders, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a pleasure again to be here on this 3 days international conference. Today is the session where we will be discussing how different policies, the incentives, which will actually encourage the different stakeholders, the actors, to actually move forward. To move forward on a path which our leaders have decided, our countries have decided, and collectively we will be moving towards sustainable habitat. So this international conference for 3 days, which is attended by a large gathering of experts and professionals here, including the policymakers, should actually lead us a kind of a very effective trajectory in coming years. Let us resolve some of the bottlenecks here, as I mentioned yesterday. But today's session will be primarily on how we actually moving forward. At the same time, we would also like to reward some of the excellent achievements, recognizing their efforts and making sure that others are also encouraged to actually perform much better than that. We have a long way to go. We need to excel. We need to find new ways to actually improve our performance. And that's where this session is very much important. We are very much fortunate to have Shri Ajay Tewari ji from the Ministry of Power. We are also happy to have Charge d'Affaires from Embassy of Switzerland and Professor Dr. Richard. So we will be hearing from you that how we actually encourage all the stakeholders to perform much better in the coming years and making sure that the path which we are deciding can be actually traversed in a much more effective manner, giving a value service to the mankind and the citizens. And perhaps we can go back to our traditional habitat, perhaps what we had in 1,000 years, 2,000 years back, where we were having very little impact on the environment, very little use of our natural resources, keeping our Mother Earth intact, and still having a very peaceful and very happy life. So we want to, at the end of this century, we want to go to a life or a planet where everybody is happy, the Mother Earth is protected, and all of us are in a peaceful civilization. So once again, it's my privilege to welcome you, all the dignitaries here, and also welcome all the delegates who are participating in this today's session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for addressing us and setting the tone for this keynote session. Thank you for sharing your views. Ladies and gentlemen, as we move on, we would now be requesting Dr. Olivier Fink, Charge d'Affaires from Embassy of Switzerland, to kindly please share his thoughts with us today. We welcome Dr. Olivier. Please put your hands together.
Additional Secretary Tewari, Director General Bacré, Professor De Deer, Director Didi, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor to inaugurate the second international conference on augmenting nature by green, affordable new habitats. Making the zero carbon transition in buildings is highly pertinent. It promotes environmental sustainability while pursuing social and economic development. This is an imperative for Switzerland. This is an imperative for India. This has to be an imperative for the world. Climate change is the biggest challenge humanity has ever faced. All countries have to get mobilized, individually and collectively. We have to act, to communicate, to inspire. Nationally determined contributions are an important tool to be matched by ambitious policies. Switzerland sent its revised NDC last year, aiming at a 50% reduction of CO2 emissions, at least by 2030, below 1990 levels. The passing of the Energy Conservation Bill 2022 in Lok Sabha is one encouraging example. I congratulate the Bureau of Energy Efficiency on this achievement. This measure will contribute to drive India toward its net zero commitment by 2070, as announced last year in Glasgow by His Excellency, Mr. Narendra Modi. Under its federal constitution, Switzerland has a duty to contribute to the preservation of natural resources. With a small group of countries, we actively promoted access to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment as a new universal human right. Last July in New York, with India's support, the United Nations General Assembly, in a historic resolution, adopted it. The implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the global reference framework for sustainability policy, is also key. Switzerland is committed to achieving the 17 goals of this agenda. Moreover, next January, Switzerland will join the United Nations Security Council for the first time of its history, and addressing climate security will be one of our 4 priorities. Domestically as well, Switzerland is dedicated, supported by innovation. We want to reduce our emissions and our energy consumption. The war in Ukraine made this last goal even more pressing. In the building sector, Switzerland has transformed the entire building landscape in less than 50 years, leading to significant savings in energy consumption. Buildings that are constructed today consume 75% less energy than they consumed in the late 70s. Switzerland's ambitions to reach net zero by 2050 is there, but our administration would like to reach that by 2030. My embassy is eager to walk the talk, or rather to run it. Addressing housing needs are commendable. India's flagship scheme of building 12 million affordable houses will provide a better quality of life to millions of people. The efforts made by the private sector to increase residential, commercial, or administrative buildings are also impressive. But can we ensure that construction on such a scale is sustainable and resource efficient? The answer is yes. And these 3 days of conference will demonstrate it. Among many fruitful Indo-Swiss projects implemented by the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation in partnership with Indian ministries like the Bureau of Energy Efficiency and the Ministry of Power, organizations, states and cities, allow me to mention one particularly striking success, LC3. The Federal Polytechnic School of Lausanne, the city where I'm from, has developed with IIT Delhi, IIT Madras, and Development Alternatives a resource and energy-efficient cement that produces up to 40% less CO2 while being cheaper and offering the same properties as conventional cement. It is a true revolution. Innovation and cooperation make our future more sustainable. This year, India proudly celebrates 75 years of independence. Next year, Switzerland and India will be celebrating 75 years of unalterable friendship. In this spirit, I want to thank the Indian government for our excellent cooperation. Together, many things are still to be accomplished. With you all, Switzerland is and will remain committed. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you a constructive deliberation over the 2 next days. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for addressing us and putting forward your points. Ladies and gentlemen, we move on, and it is now time for the keynote address, which will be presented by Dr. Richard D. Dare, the professor at University of Sydney, School of Architecture, Design and Planning. Let's welcome Dr. Richard, please.
Thank you very much, Director General, and also the Additional Secretary of the Ministry of Power. Thank you also to Dr. Olivia Fink for setting the context of this August meeting today. And also the Honourable Minister of Power and New Renewable Energy, and a vote of thanks also to the Director General of B. So, my presentation this morning is going to look at these 4 themes, and I'll dedicate a chapter, if you like, of my presentation to each one of them. So we're looking at the climate problem. I think we're all kind of fairly familiar with it, but it's a rapidly evolving situation, so I'll recap some of the key points there. And the impacts that we can expect from that evolving situation on the built environment, and then the implications of that for energy, and in turn we'll look at the implications for thermal comfort, which at the end of the presentation, I think what I hope that you will appreciate actually sits at the centre of a very major problem that we're confronting here. So, I'll review the warming climate issue from the World Meteorological Organization's perspective, and it's resulting from anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions, which we're all familiar with. It's also being compounded by the densification of our populations, creating urban heat island effects superimposed on the background of global warming. This is accelerating a demand for air conditioning and cooling, and which is rising inexorably due to the confluence of these climatic factors, demographic factors, and economic factors, all being concentrated in the hot, humid parts of the world. Apart from undermining our greenhouse emission abatement strategies, growing air conditioning demand exacerbates peak electricity demands, and that puts further strain on our electricity grids, which has its own set of problems. So, tightening the energy performance requirements of building codes is an obvious strategy to dampen cooling energy demand, as is the implementation of minimum energy performance standards for new air conditioning equipment. But apart from these engineering interventions and improvements in the design of our built environment, there's another significant but I think largely untapped potential on the demand side of this problem, and that is adaptive thermal comfort. So that's where I hope to finish this presentation this morning. So the climate problem, I think you've all seen graphs of this nature before, so I won't labour the point. 2016, 2019, 2020 were the 3 warmest years on record, and 2022 is shaping up to be the topper of all toppers, with what's going on at the moment in disparate locations from California to China. There's no precedent in our climatic history for these catastrophic events that we're witnessing today. Ocean heat content is at a record high, and global mean sea level continues to rise. The Arctic and Antarctic sea ice covering is alarmingly below average, and that in turn creates a positive feedback loop because it reduces the planetary albedo. So average global temperature has now reached 1 degree above the pre-industrial baseline, and where we were aiming to be, according to the Paris 2015 Accord, that is to try and limit global warming to 1.5 degrees, is almost evaporating before our very eyes. We're not on track to meet those targets. If you look at this graph, you can see the pledges that we've made so far are falling well short of what we would need in order to achieve the 1.5, let alone the 2 degree target that we set ourselves. Now, superimposed on that problem is the urban heat island effect. And it's an effect, without elaborating too much of the science behind it, it results from the complex urban morphology, which restricts the radiative cooling from urban areas. It also is compounded by the density of population in urban areas. It's also related to the albedo, or the reflectivity of the materials that we build our cities with. It also has a bearing on, or it's affected by the thermal capacity and other thermal properties of the materials of urban areas. Also the emissivity, the wavelengths at which these surfaces remove radiant heat. And then last but not least, the waste heat that we generate in urban areas, and a very sizable proportion of that is sourced from air conditioning. And so you can see the circularity of the problem here. As we have an increasing demand for air conditioning, we're also exacerbating the problem that we're trying to solve with air conditioning. Now, the climatic driver for cooling demand is expressed in a metric called cooling degree days, which basically calculates the difference between each day in a typical meteorological year against a baseline temperature of 18 degrees Celsius. And as you can see, the most number of cooling degree days in a typical meteorological year occur in the tropical regions. But the projected increase in cooling degree days by 2050 is estimated to be approximately 25% on what we currently have. And most of that 25% increase in cooling demand is going to occur in already hot locations where the cooling demand currently is not being fully met. So that brings me to the next topic of energy and buildings. Cooling represents the fastest growing energy end use in the buildings worldwide. Space cooling energy tripled between 1990 and 2016. And at current growth trends, it will triple again by 2050 to 6,200 terawatt hours, with 70% of that increase coming from the residential sector. The lion's share of that projected growth in energy use for space cooling by 2050 will come from the emerging economies, with just 3 countries, India, China, and Indonesia, contributing half of global cooling energy demand growth. And in this graph, you can see the growth in CO2 emissions attributable to air conditioning cooling, and it's a steady increase between 1990 and 2060. The biggest source of those CO2 emissions for cooling demand is coal-fired power stations. And you can see that the green line on the top of that graph indicates that the percentage share of total CO2 emissions attributable to cooling, currently representing 12%. And that's the result of the fact that air conditioning energy is, at the moment, largely derived from fossil fuels. There is a glimmer of positive news in this slide, though, and that is that the peak demand for cooling is coincident in the 24-hour diurnal cycle with the availability of solar resources. So that's definitely something we need to explore further. Now, the challenge of meeting cooling demand growth in an affordable and sustainable manner is further exacerbated by its particular effect on peak electricity demand. The share of space cooling in peak electricity load is projected to rise sharply in many countries, with the biggest increases occurring in, again, the hot countries such as India, where on current trend, the share jumps from just 10% today to 45% of peak demand in 2050. Now, most response strategies have focused on building envelope efficiency, and I've heard many presenters at this conference elaborate these basic principles. The use of passive design principles, thermal mass, thermal insulation, albedo of materials, material emissivity, and the exploitation of cool roofs and supercool roofs, window-to-wall ratio, etc., etc. But a point to bear in mind in this context is that a lot of the expected air conditioning energy savings as a result of improved thermal performance in the envelope fails to materialise due to a phenomenon that behavioural economists refer to as the rebound effect. The assumption that improving the efficiency will cause energy to reduce is undermined by the behaviour of occupants who use the improved efficiency of their building to actually improve or expand their comfort demand. Maybe air condition more rooms of the house instead of just 1 or 2. Which brings me to this, the main theme in this presentation this morning, thermal comfort, which is my specialism. And I always begin with the question of what is comfort? And if you ask an engineer what is comfort, certainly an engineer in my country, they will tell you, oh, thermal comfort is what occurs between 21 and 23 degrees Celsius. And it's as simple as that. In their mind, that's the way buildings are operated, that's the way buildings are designed. I can't speak for the Indian situation, but my experience of this hotel would suggest that it's not dissimilar to the Australian experience or concept of thermal comfort. Now, on the research side, the researchers have been addressing this question in recent years, and they've challenged this orthodoxy. In the adaptive model of thermal comfort, occupants and their indoor climate are viewed as an integrated, self-regulating feedback system. And that concept is summarised in this, what we call the adaptive comfort principle, that states that if a change occurs that produces discomfort, people tend to respond in ways that will restore their comfort. And the point here is that it's a dynamic concept, as opposed to that static, flat, 21 to 23 degree concept of thermal comfort. Now, the adaptive response of building occupants to their indoor climate operates at several different levels. There's a physiological level in a process that we refer to as acclimatisation, adjustment of our thermoregulatory set points, the core temperature at which sweating starts to occur, all of these changes that result from prolonged exposure to heat. We call it acclimatisation. I certainly had the first-hand experience of what acclimatisation means coming from a winter in the Southern Hemisphere 2 days ago to Delhi, and I was taken aback at how physiologically capable citizens of New Delhi are at dealing with levels of heat and humidity that were absolutely shocking for my system, stepping off an aeroplane. But sitting on top of the physiological layer of adaptation is a behavioural layer, and this is really just simply about adjusting the body's heat balance by changing our clothing, and I'm noticing many members of the audience at this meeting have been searching for extra layers of clothing to deal with the overzealous air conditioning in the hotel. It also involves adjustment of our metabolic heat production, so avoiding strenuous exercise in heat being the obvious example. Now, sitting on top of the, well, I should say, augmenting the behavioural adaptation response is a layer that I refer to as the psychological adaptation. And this is more subtle. It's probably best described from the scientific point of view at this point in time as a bit of a black box. But we do have pretty strong evidence that comfort expectations are not set in stone, that they are adjustable, and they're adjusted according to primarily in response to prolonged experience of a situation. They're adjusted according to our expectations of a particular building. If we expect a building to be air conditioned and it's not, it will be unacceptable. But if we expect a residence to be unair conditioned, that's not a problem, as long as our expectations are confirmed or met. And then finally, we could refer to cultural climatic adaptations. And I think this is probably best illustrated with reference to the vernacular architectures of the different cultures around the world, including India. Now, the empirical evidence underpinning this concept, this vague concept of adaptive thermal comfort, is actually quite extensive. And there are several approaches to the validation of the concept. The one that I'm associated with most directly is the one that was performed by ASHRAE, the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating and Air Conditioning Engineers, back in the 1990s. So it's actually been around for quite a while. And we collected 21,000 sets of data indoor climatic observations and comfort surveys, and 160 buildings, 4 continents, diverse climate zones. And in each one of those 21,000 sets of data, we've got paired observations of subjective comfort and objective indoor climatic conditions. And the analysis, the meta-analysis, is all about putting those 2 sets of data together. And out of that meta-analysis, we came up with this, what now appears in the ASHRAE standard. It's the ASHRAE adaptive comfort model and standard, and it defines a band of temperatures that are deemed to be acceptable to 80 or 90% of the occupants of a building, of a naturally ventilated building, relative to the outdoor thermal condition of that site. So the input, the X variable, is mean monthly outdoor temperature. And you can see very sensibly that comfort temperatures indoors go up as the outdoor climate goes up or gets warmer. It's not a flat 22 degrees Celsius. So, driven by concerns about global climate change, the last decade or so, we've seen a transition of these models into regulatory documents and guidelines. And I'll just rattle off a few of them that have occurred in recent years. There's the ASHRAE standard. The Europeans have got their own version of pretty much the same model. China has its version, and Brazil is currently working on its version. And the International Energy Agency has also produced undertaken a major investigation of adaptive thermal comfort as well, recognising the importance that it has for achieving comfort in low energy buildings. Here in India, there are several very active research groups looking at this problem as well. The group that in CEPT University in Ahmedabad has recently finished an analysis of residential adaptive thermal comfort. And I won't steal their thunder by giving you too many results here. Suffice to say that it was a very large survey, 294 residences in 8 cities across India, 5 different climate zones. And again, the pairing of subjective thermal comfort indoors with objective measurements of conditions in that environment. And just to show you the compatibility, if you like, of the different standards from different jurisdictions, ASHRAE on the left, the European version in the middle, and the India model for residential applications on the right, they all have pretty much the same structure and the same format, all show that increase in indoor comfort temperature with increasing warmth in the outdoor environment. I should also point out, though, that the gradient or the slope on the Indian residential project is actually, relative to the other two, much steeper. And that tells us that the Indian residential adaptive comfort scenario is more adaptive, if you like, than the European and the American. So what are the implications for the adaptive comfort model for the looming energy crunch? Well, the obvious one is that people are comfortable in wider temperature ranges in naturally ventilated buildings. And I think this is about people adjusting their expectations. If people expect the environment in their residence to be naturally ventilated, the experience of comfort is just seems more easily attained, more readily available. Comfort set points in air-conditioned spaces should also be taken into account here. They should be nudged away from that flat line of 22 degrees Celsius towards something more appropriate to the external climatic conditions. For a whole stack of reasons, the obvious one being that even we adjust our clothing for what's going on outdoors instead of being acclimatized and getting dressed for what we find inside buildings. Mixed mode buildings are encouraged by these findings. Mixed mode being designs in which we've got maximum availability of natural ventilation, and then the option to switch over to air conditioning when the external conditions dictate. And finally, we can mention here part-time, part-space approaches. Instead of air conditioning the whole space, just applying air conditioning to the occupied parts of the internal environment. There are other comfort-related demand-side management strategies that I wanted to mention just briefly. One in particular, demand response, which I haven't heard discussion yet at this meeting, but I think it's something that has a particular value to the Indian setting, given the explosive demands that air conditioning will be placing on the electricity grid in this country. And demand response basically is a variety of strategies to shift that peak cooling demand away from the time of electricity peak. So it means pre-cooling spaces or storing cools in whatever way possible. It also involves manipulations of the electricity tariff so that there are disincentives put in place for people to use excessive amounts of air conditioning during peak electricity episodes. And there are other financial incentives put to encourage people over to demand response as well. And then also I'd like to mention another project that connects to this discussion, other comfort-related demand-side management strategies. And I'll present a talk in the afternoon session on thermal comfort about this, so I won't say too much here, but personal comfort systems. Personal comfort systems basically break away from this idea of conditioning the entire space and shift the conditioning down to the level, the resolution of the individual occupant. So the individual occupant is being conditioned rather than the total environment. It's a way of reducing energy demand dramatically, and by localizing the conditioning, it provides the opportunity to change the set point of the ambient space. Instead of 22, maybe 27 degrees or 28 degrees in the ambient space with localized conditioning for the occupants. There are a variety of engineering strategies to achieve these personalized comfort solutions. I won't go through them here. So, this brings me to my simple set of conclusions. There's a convergence of climate change, population growth, economic development, rapid urbanization, all of this meaning that India is facing a looming cooling crunch in coming years. This poses a daunting challenge to India's CO2 emission abatement pledges, and it will impede the building sector's transition towards zero carbon. In preparing for this looming challenge, most attention has been focused on, to date, on the built environment, the building envelope, and also the mechanical services that, like air conditioning systems and their energy performance. But more attention is probably required on the occupants themselves, and this is where adaptive thermal comfort comes into play. Climatically appropriate comfort zone temperatures, demand response strategies for air conditioning, personal comfort systems to deliver comfort to occupants, not the unoccupied space. So, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Richard, for that interesting presentation that you shared with us. While you were presenting, it was very interesting to note about you that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to share that he has about 35 years of research career, and he's currently the most cited living researcher in the domain of thermal comfort, with over 250 peer-reviewed papers plus several monographs on this subject. We thank you so much for joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, we move on, and before we present the awards, we would like to request our Chief Guest, Shri Ajay Tewari ji, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Power, to please address us. Let's welcome Shri Tewari.
Respected Shri Abhay Bakreji, Director General of Bureau of Energy Efficiency. Respected Dr. Olivier Finkji, Charge d'Affaires, Embassy of Switzerland. Honorable Dr. Richard D. Deere, Professor, Sydney University, and Shri Saurabh Didi, Director BE, and all my esteemed colleagues and guests. I'm glad to be here today amongst you with all the scientists, teachers, academicians, building experts, professionals, and from industry representatives, and most importantly, in front of the Nirman awardees, prospective awardees, who are expectedly waiting for their awards, and I'm delaying it a little bit. It is indeed my privilege to speak to you in this prestigious forum of ANGAN. As we all know, ANGAN in Hindi means the inner courtyard of our Indian homes, and that is how this word has emanated from there. Maybe in our childhood we have all played in our ANGAN, and it is very central to our psychology that ANGAN is the place where the family meets. It is the place where there is sunlight, open to sky, which is environment friendly. And I think all of us who have lived in small towns, villages in our childhood, we must remember our ANGAN. It not only occupies our mindscape, it is also, its mention is found everywhere in our literature. Whenever you refer to the vernacular literature, you will find its mention. Its very existence symbolizes a green, open to sunlight, well-ventilated, and an exuberant space, full of energy. The concepts such as green buildings, energy conservation building code, zero carbon transition in buildings, all these concepts seem to emanate from the importance and value that we attach to ANGAN, the central courtyard. Let me come to what our visionary Prime Minister Modi ji said in COP26 in Glasgow in 2021, if we all remember. He mentioned about the concept of life, L-I-F-E, lifestyle for environment, and then launched this global initiative on life this year in 2022, June. He said that the vision of life is to live a lifestyle that is in tune with our planet and does not harm it. And those who live such a lifestyle are called pro-planet people. 3P. Mission Life borrows from the past, operates in the present, and focuses on the future. Mission Life also is related to 3 R's very closely: reduce, reuse, and recycle. And these are the concepts woven in our life. The circular economy has been an integral part of our culture and lifestyle. This is what he said during inauguration of the global initiative. We know energy conservation, energy efficiency, and sustainable development goals. These are all the part of our DNA. Life puts focus on healthy and sustainable way of living based on traditions and value of conservation and moderation, and of mindful and deliberate utilization instead of mindless and destructive consumption. A mass movement for life can play a crucial role in achieving a zero carbon transition in buildings for which all of us have gathered today. When we talk about the thermal comfort, our decisions related with the purchase and operations of appliances have a direct impact on the energy use and carbon emissions from the buildings. We all should be thinking of ways in which we can make life a real mass movement. We may also recall about the Panchamrit declarations, not declarations, basically the lofty ambitions of India, announced by Modi ji during COP26, Panchamrit, the 5 nectar elements. Among these were reduction in carbon emissions by 1 billion ton by 2030, reduction in carbon intensity of the economy by 45% from the 2005 level by 2030, and net zero emissions by 2070. These lofty ambitions are not only relevant here in making the zero carbon transition in buildings, but have also become the guiding principles for all of us in respect of climate change. Addressing the carbon emissions for the building sector is crucial for addressing climate change. It is apt that this forum focuses on the issue of making the zero carbon transitions in buildings and provides a platform to dialogue and promote energy efficiency and carbon emission reduction from buildings. You also know that India has taken a cabinet decision and has updated its NDCs recently. It stands committed to reduce emissions intensity of its GDP by 45% by 2030 from 2005 level, and to achieve 50% cumulative electric power installed capacity from non-fossil fuel-based energy sources by 2030. As on today, our building sector represents 33% of electricity consumption in India, with commercial sector and residential sector accounting for 8 and 25% respectively. It is also estimated that there will be 1 billion square meter of additional commercial building space, as well as 3 billion square meter of residential building space, which will be built by 2030. This means about 2/3 of the total buildings are yet to be built. With this pace, the country will face higher energy costs and extremely high consumption for decades. This will also have a multiplier effect on climate change. However, the silver lining is that you all exist here and you are working very hard on this aspect of electricity savings, energy emissions, energy efficient space cooling systems, appliances and equipments. The buildings with your effort can also become net positive by installing renewable energy systems such as solar water heating and using solar photovoltaic. Let me also remind you that we have Energy Conservation Act enacted in 2001. Our previous generation they were very good administrators and legislators who had this foresight when we had started thinking about the ozone depletion and climate change in 1990s. We immediately had a Conservation Act in 2001. This act has been very useful and like a Bible to us as to how to meet the energy efficiency and also move into the climate change scenario. Today, about a month back, we have introduced Energy Conservation Amendment Bill. With the moving time, with the changing time and changing demands over the period of time. And one of the amendments related to the Energy Conservation Building Code. From ECBC, now we propose to move to ECSBC, Energy Conservation and Sustainable Building Code, thus opening opportunity to provide norms not only for energy efficiency and conservation, but also for use of renewable energy and other requirements for green buildings. This amendment bill has already been passed with great effort in the Lok Sabha recently, in the lower house, and it is going to be moved in the upper house, that is Rajya Sabha, in the next session of Parliament. While on the one hand, the government has introduced a number of policy initiatives for large-scale energy efficiency interventions, on the other, India has also done wonders to address the challenges related to climate change through energy transition initiatives, which are aligned with its commitments made on the global stage, and Indian case study on current trends is a tale of extraordinary achievements. Despite the fact that India traditionally contributed only 5% of the world emissions, and in terms of per capita, only 1/3 of the world average, there has been a stupendous growth in the uptake of renewable energy during the last decade. An unimaginable growth when today we stand and say with pride that India's non-fossil power capacity, installed capacity, is more than 41% today in the energy mix. There have been plethora of green initiatives like National Green Hydrogen Mission, One Sun, One World, One Grid, OSOG, International Solar Alliance, Green Energy Corridor, production-linked incentive schemes for solar PV, faster adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicles, in short, FAME, the famous FAME scheme, and also a very popular and ubiquitous LED bulb schemes, Ujala. Today, we would be awarding the winners of the first Nirman Awards. Nirman Awards are constituted with the objective to acknowledge and encourage exemplary building designs, complying with Bureau of Energy Efficiency's Energy Conservation Building Codes. These national level awards acknowledge exemplary building designs and are an instrument to develop case studies, to document and disseminate information on effective energy efficient practices and implementable strategies. Being the chairperson of the Joint Advisory Committee of the Indo-Swiss Building Energy Efficiency Project, that is BEEP, it's a proud moment for me today to acknowledge Ministry of Power's 10-year-old collaboration with the government of Switzerland. I also congratulate BEE and its partners for organizing this conference, and I'm confident that the experts and professionals from building construction industry who are attending ANGAN will join hands with the governments and to take India to a leadership position in the developing sustainable habitat. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your thoughts with all of us today. Ladies and gentlemen, we are moving on to the award ceremony now, and before we actually request our chief guest to kindly please present the awards, we would request everyone to kindly please take a look at the screen. We have a small video on the background of this award ceremony. Let's take a look.
India is set to build a huge building stock in the next few decades, and it is necessary to make them energy efficient and thermally comfortable. Nirman Awards are constituted with the objective to acknowledge and encourage exemplary building designs complying with BEE's Energy Conservation Building Codes. All projects which comply with mandatory criteria of code residential or commercial, can only apply for this award. With a total of 17 categories of awards, it covers all types of residential and commercial buildings. Nirman Awards also aims to document and disseminate awarded projects to inspire others to learn and adopt similar practices. Come, be a part of Nirman Awards.
Thank you so much. May we please request our chief guest and the other dignitaries on the dais to kindly please join us in the front of the stage to present the awards, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we would now be beginning with the award ceremony. Residential awards consist of two categories, namely affordable housing and market rate housing. The project needs to be Eco Niwas Samhita 2018 compliant to be shortlisted for the award. The Nirman Award for the residential category has been awarded to two towers of the same project coming under market rate housing category, that is DLF The Crest Tower B and Tower C based in Gurugram. May we please invite Mr. Alok Kumar from DLF Limited to please collect the award. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together as we congratulate many congratulations, DLF The Crest, Tower B and Tower C based in Gurugram. Many congratulations once again. Ladies and gentlemen, now we shall start with the commercial category. There are several building types coming under the purview of Energy Conservation Building Code for commercial buildings. The Nirman Award for Naturally Ventilated Building category goes to New Academic Block Debate in Andaman and Nicobar Islands. May we please invite Shri Kuldeep Singh Thakur from ANN Bhavan to please collect the award. Zordar taliyan. So this is the commercial category, award for naturally ventilated building. Many congratulations. The Nirman Award for Educational category goes to Administration Building Main Campus, Kashmir University in Kashmir. May we please invite Mr. Sitaram Gupta from ANN Design Studio Private Limited to please collect the award. Zordar taliyan. This is the award for Educational category. Many congratulations to the winners, and here we move on to the next award now. The Nirman Award for Healthcare category goes to Jupiter Lifeline Hospitals Limited in Pune. May we please invite Mr. Nilesh Shinde from Jupiter Lifeline Hospitals to please collect the award. Many congratulations. Moving on to the next award now. The Nirman Award for Hospitality category goes to ITC Kohinoor in Hyderabad. May we please invite Mr. Sunil Upadhyay from ITC Hotels to please collect the award. The Hospitality category. Moving on to the next award now. The Nirman Award for Shopping Complex category goes to IKEA in Navi Mumbai. May we please invite Ms. Sonia Kanwar from IKEA to please collect the award. जोरदार तालियां हमारे सभी विजेताओं के लिए. बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं. The Nirman Award for Business category goes to Infosys Crescent Phase 1 in Bengaluru. The project is also being acknowledged for the design of their comfort systems. Therefore, they're being presented for comfort systems and controls under Exemplary Performance Award. May we please invite Mr. Guru Prakash Shastri from Infosys to please collect the award. So this is the award for business category and also the award for comfort systems and controls. Many congratulations. Moving forward with the other exemplary performance awards. The Nirman Exemplary Performance Award for Building Envelope goes to Ela Green School. May we please invite Ms. Samhita from Ela Green Consultants to please collect the award. Many, many congratulations. Moving on to the next award, the Nirman Exemplary Performance Award for Lighting and Controls. Ladies and gentlemen, the Nirman Exemplary Performance Award for Lighting and Controls goes to Kenna Metal GES Block. May we please invite Mr. Aninda Basu from Conserve Consultants to please collect the award. Zordar taaliyan. बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं. Ladies and gentlemen, the next award, the Nirman Exemplary Performance Award for Electrical and Renewable Energy Systems goes to Credle Corporate Office Building. The Karnataka STA Credle is also receiving the State Award Category 1. Congratulations to Karnataka STA. I would invite Shri K.P. Rudrapaya from Karnataka STA Credle to please collect the award. Many, many congratulations. And now moving on to the state awards. The Nirman Award for State Category 2 has been awarded to the Haryana STA REDA. I would like to invite Dr. Hanif Qureshi from Haryana STA to please collect the award. बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the next category, which is the state awards. And last but not least, the Nirman Award for State Category 3 has been awarded to the Andaman and Nicobar STA ANGAN Administration Electricity Department. May we please invite Shri Kuldeep Singh Thakur from ANGAN Bhavan to please collect the award. Many, many congratulations. बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं. Thank you so much. Thank you. सभी विजेताओं के लिए हम यही कहना चाहेंगे कि हर चेहरे पर नूर चढ़ा, हर दिल में खुशी समाई है. आज हर चेहरे पर नूर चढ़ा, हर दिल में खुशी समाई है. सभी विजेताओं को उनकी इस जीत की बहुत बहुत बधाई है, बधाई है. Ladies and gentlemen, सभी के लिए जोरदार तालियां, सभी के लिए. For all the awardees, I think they really deserve a big hands for the wonderful work that has gone in. Thank you so much. And before we finally present the vote of thanks, may we please request request for the mementos which will now be presented to our esteemed panel on the dais. As we begin by presenting a memento to our chief guest, Shri Ajay Tewari, may I please request Shri Abhay Bakre to please do so. Ladies and gentlemen, token of respect and appreciation for participation in the meet, may we please request Shri Abhay Bakre to present a memento to Shri Ajay Tewari. Ladies and gentlemen, तालियों के साथ स्वागत, अभिनंदन. May I please request Shri Saurabh Didi to please present a memento to Dr. Olivier Fink, Charge d'Affaires from Embassy of Switzerland. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank Dr. Olivier for joining us here today. May I please request Shri Ashok Kumar from BEE to please present a memento to Dr. Richard. Zordar Talia. And may I also once again request Shri Ashok Kumar to please present a memento to Shri Abhay Bakre, please. Ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the close of the keynote session, may I please request Shri Saurabh Didi, Director BEE, to kindly please present the vote of thanks now.
Thank you. Very good afternoon to everyone. Climate change is sometimes misunderstood as being about changes in the weather. In reality, it is about changes in our way of life. And first of all, I would like to thank Mr. Ajay Tewari ji because he aptly said that what ANGAN is. And ANGAN is actually how we can stop that changing, that our way of life, how it was earlier, how we can go back to the same way of life so that we are close to our climate. And as he said, ANGAN is a place where we can have maximum sunlight, greenery and everything. So similarly, we have to develop our infrastructure, our buildings in such a way that we are not using external sources. So one of the major thing for this ANGAN workshop or ANGAN conference is that how we can go to the net zero goals and how we can have our passive building design. I would like to thank Shri Ajay Tewari ji for taking us to the same right goals. I would like to thank Mr. Richard D. Gear, who is a professor, School of Architecture, University of Sydney, and he aptly said about that how adaptive comfort is important for us and how we are going to get this cooling crunch. And he is very right that from 2 million sales of air conditioner in 10 years back, now we are having almost 7 million sales every year. So you can imagine that how load of air conditioner or how cooling crunch we are going to get. I would like to thank Mr. Oliver Fink, Charge d'Affaires, Embassy of Switzerland as well, and looking forward to work along with Swiss government on the climate change and the building energy efficiency in future. Also would like to thank Swiss Development Corporation that to supporting us in organizing this ANGAN conference. I would like to also thank Shri Abhay Bakre ji, who is Director General of Bureau of Energy Efficiency, for leading us in this building energy sector, apart from all other activities as well from the climate change. And also Ministry of Power, because the Shri Tewari ji said that we are going to have energy conservation sustainability building code. So that is the big leap for energy efficiency sector in the building domain. And then our buildings will be not only energy efficient, but they will be sustainable for the future, and that will be a big step for the net zero goal. I would like to thank all the awardees, participants, delegates, speakers, for attending this program, also participating in this program. And also I would like to say thanks to Swiss Development Corporation, my colleagues in Bureau of Energy Efficiency, organizers, and also hotel for giving us this venue and hosting us very well. Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you so much, Shri Saurabh Didi, for proposing the vote of thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, we thank each of our panelists on the dais. We thank our chief guest and our fellow speakers for giving us their time. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a group picture now, and after that, all of us will disperse for a 1-hour lunch break. We'll come back and we have the next